it. And matter of fact, it's kind of cool here, but I'm almost certain it wasn't that because I walked downstairs. So what happened was my whole house turned off. Everything turned off, and I thought it was just the third floor. You know, I go to the breaker box, turn the third floor back on. But as I was walking downstairs, like I noticed like everything was off, and I was halfway downstairs, and I was like, well, before I go check the breaker, let me unplug the AC. So I was coming back up here, and then all the power turned back on. Everything just powered back up. But I had to wait for this TV is a Roku or whatever, so it's connected to it. So I had to wait for the Wi-Fi to boot back up, and then wait for the TV and the PlayStation and everything to reset. I don't know what happened. I don't know why. Like I said, it wasn't just the third floor, it's the entire house. Yo, it was good. It was good, bro. Just had some weird shit happen. But bet it was Mark. You know what? It's weird because I was about to go all the way downstairs and I didn't. And so I never went all the way downstairs. I should have a weird, I don't know. I'll be right back. Let me just walk down all the way downstairs real quick. Yeah, bro, that was weird. So, uh, Omizu, NP. So you guys didn't listen to Terrence Howard on Joe Rogan, right? Because if nobody don't come into this Instagram, I'm gonna turn that shit off, and we can listen to that conversation while we paint. What do y'all think about that? He said, man went on the trip. Yo, how he started out, the way he started out, So so we did listen to most of this in the stream, right?
You remember coming out? You remember being compressed, and this, you want to panic, but you're flooded with, go to in my book, there's a picture of Einstein reading Walter Russell's first book, second book, The Universal One, because it comes elliptical with titanium, vanadium, and chromium behaves. Lithium, what? And I knew, same TeV, 40.5 hertz. The next one would be like 81 hertz. You go to silicon, it would double up and would be 162 hertz. You go to cobalt, and it'll be 324 hertz. It's, in that base, if you were to take the angles of incidence or the tones that they create, their color. Like you can turn color back into sound based upon, it's the same wavelength, it's just twice as long or much longer. So all you have to do is keep dividing light by 2.
Keep that up, Joe.
You keep dividing light by 2, and you'll ultimately get back to the audible sound of it, because there was a relationship between light and color, sound and tone, matter and shape. I put, I sent over Walter Russell's.
Trying to get to that next one.
Yeah, it's Walter Russell's periodic table that he put together. Now you will compare that to what Mendeleev's periodic table. You'll compare Walter Russell's to it, and you'll see something completely different. It's unwinding.
Whoa.
It's unwinding. And you see there's a relationship that hydrogen.
So you had figured this out at a young age?
I had already seen this. This was all inside of that house. I had access to it, and I knew the relationship.
You saw this in dreams?
I saw it as a circle. Everything was a full circle laid out, and each area was just expanding, like wrapping a rag around your hand. The first wrap, it's so tight. The very first wrap is so tight. That's the first one that Walter Russell did, yeah. But go back to the wiggly one. This is how I saw it more so, but as a vortex. But you'll see there's a relationship between hydrogen, carbon, silicon, cobalt, rhodium. They're all bonded. They all sit as the middle point between two noble gases. So those things don't really exist. It's only one substance. Now the problem is, the first thing that we're able to perceive is hydrogen. That's the first visible element, because before it is too dense for us to perceive it. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
But as you reach into the next octave, the carbon octave, and they call that a bisexual tone, because the carbon has 2 tones to it. It has a negative side and a positive side. The part where lithium behaves, lithium is contractive. Beryllium is contractive. Boron is contractive. But the moment you get to carbon, you balance it out. It gets to a perfect balance of plus and minus 4. So it's a double tone. Then nitrogen is minus 3,1. minus 3, oxygen is minus 2, fluorine is minus 1. Now the balance of this, all of those are mates. Fluorine and lithium naturally mate. If you have lithium bonded with any other element, the moment that fluorine is introduced, it will break all bonds violently so it can bond with fluorine. Same thing with beryllium and oxygen. That's why it said, and what they've tried to keep from us, if you want to break water into its component parts of hydrogen and oxygen, all you have to do is introduce beryllium or the sound of beryllium. And oxygen will violently break away from any other thing, even hydrogen, to bond with that beryllium. And now you can have it just with the frequency of it. And since the hydrogen is smaller, hydrogen will, that waveform, you can send that out into one tube, the oxygen into another tube, without using electrolysis, without using heat. It was just the frequency, and the proof of it, if you go back up just a little bit higher, we know the relationship between sodium and chlorine. They're equal and opposite mates. If you get out of the pool and you got chlorine and you're itching from the chlorine, all you have to do is get some real salt and rub that on your skin, and it'll turn right into an oil. It naturally neutralizes each other. So everything has an equal and opposite mate. The lithium becomes sodium in the next octave, doubles the same exact tone, just doubled and wider. The sodium becomes potassium in the next octave, widens up. The reason that arsenic kills us is because our DNA has nitrogen and it has phosphorus in it, because nitrogen unwinds into the next octave right after silicon and becomes phosphorus. Our DNA has both of those in there, but it's going by tone. So the moment arsenic, which sits as a -3 on the next octave, the moment arsenic is introduced, the body thinks that, oh, this is my thing that I need, and it tries to wrap itself around the arsenic, but it causes the DNA to unravel because it's 4 times as large as that nitrogen was. And those other little elements, titanium, vanadium, chromium, magnesium, and iron, all of those aren't true elements. Those are isotopes. Those things, those first 3 are the full tones. They make full spheres. But now it becomes elliptical with titanium, vanadium, and chromium. And on the other side, it's like when, like I said, if you wrap the rag around your hand, the first wrap, really tight. You can't get much out of it. Second wrap, damn near can't see the difference of it. Third one, you start seeing hydrogen. The fourth wrap, you see carbon. I need a piece of paper or a rag and I can show you that twist. But in between each one of them, by the time you get, nature does not allow us in the silicone octave for there to expand out. But there is the same titanium, vanadium, chromium, magnesium, and iron that exists between aluminum and silicone. But nature doesn't allow us to unravel that. But now with the wave conjugations, we can. We couldn't do that before because we didn't know the angles of incidence that were necessary to open these things up. And you couldn't do that with the platonic solids because the platonic solids were averages and approximations. They, like I've said a number of times, you show me a real straight line in nature. If everything in the universe, everything is expressed in motion, all motion expressed in waves, all waves were curved. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So the greater the action, the greater the reaction. The greater the reaction, the greater the resistance. The greater the resistance, the greater the curvature. Because the universe is based off of equanimity, which Einstein left out in his theory of relativity, the balancing side of the gravity was caused by electric force. Electricity is always seeking a higher pressure condition. It spins northeast, is trying to get to the center of an area, the center of a cone. But the next electric wave is coming, so it gets pushed out, and as it's pushed out, it gets to the vortices. And that's some on those pieces, those vortices.
What happened?
Now
What
instead
happened,
of it spinning northeasterly.
Puff said he stole the color wheel and mashed the periodic table in there. Oh, damn. The greatest Joe Rogan podcast to date. Get this man off these streets. Yo, Puff is not feeling this shit, bro. Hey, man. Everybody else think he's on to something, man. And then plus that periodic table, he admits like he tried to come up with that model, and as he was trying to construct it, he realized somebody else already did it. Somebody else before him. Somebody else doing Einstein's time. Einstein's time. And Einstein said, "Man, I wish I would have read more of that dude's research. Man, he was on to some shit." I mean, if you were there with Tesla, and he was trying to explain the coil, trying to explain his Tesla coil, you'd probably be saying the same thing, man. Get this man off the streets. What the fuck is he talking about?
Centripetally, it's forced to spin centrifugally, and it spins southwesternly, and it expands. It keeps decaying until you get 4 magnetic waves that hit each other at 120-degree angles. At that point, they reconvert back into the electric field, and then they make their way back to their source again, whether it's the star, whatever star it came into. What happens when we get older? We expand at our equator, right? We get shorter at the top. Why? Because the electric force is pushing in and condensing, and the magnetism expands out at the equator. The electron field, the electrons, that's just discharged electricity, devitalized electricity coming from the sun, coming from the earth. It's the waste product.
It really was a lot to take in.
But it hits our magnetic field, and then it gets pulled right back in and gets compressed again, and now it becomes electricity for the earth.
I put this right up there with the that first Elon Musk interview, because that's one of my all-time favorites too. Because on that shit, that's when he was he was already warning about AI back then, yo. And he was like, bruh, if these motherfuckers do what I think they trying to do, this shit ain't good for nobody. And so that's why he helped create OpenAI. And now he feel like OpenAI is doing the same thing he thinks we shouldn't do. And so then now he owns X, and so he was like, man, I'm gonna make my own X AI called Grok. And I've only played with it one time. I need to go try it some more, but like, your boy been up on this shit forever. But that episode, yeah, that episode with Elam and this episode right here, yeah, these two crazy ass episodes. Word. He had Cat Williams on there, but it wasn't, I don't know, Cat Williams. This shit wasn't all that. I ain't even watched that whole episode, honestly. the inside of his jacket?
Earth, and then it pushes itself right back out again at the equator. The equator is 5 miles wider than the poles. Electricity, Einstein left that out of his equation because he coupled electricity and magnetism together and didn't realize that electricity was the equal and opposite of magnetism. Electricity being the contracted field. You breathe in, that's a contractive thing. You breathe out, that's a magnetic thing, a radiative thing. But they use the term magnet as an attractor. But to magnify something means to what? Make it larger, increase the space. That's the work of radiation. That's what Walter Russell was talking about all those years. That's the work of radiation. It's the electricity between the things that pull them together. The Coulomb force that supposedly opposites attract and push each other away. If that was true, then hot air and cold air would seek each other out. They're the same substance, but just but in a different state. They move in opposite directions from each other. Hot water and cold water move in opposite directions from each other. The reason two magnets seem like the North Pole is attracted to the South Pole, because if you had two rivers or two hoses with water,
This guy right here.
Now, this is the Earth's Let's Go lightning round. You ready? You got your electrolyte?
I'm ready, Yvonne.
Okay, well, now.
Yeah, so I spent about 1/10 of the energy that I spent on figuring out magnetism and field theory. I could have figured out the stock market and could have been sitting on the beach in the Bahamas somewhere. That's not a joke, actually. Can't take it with you when you go. I'd much rather know the secrets of the universe, honestly. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't mind taking a week off somewhere. You know, the literally thousands.
Okay, so like I said, this has been several years ago, maybe 5 years ago now. Me and my uncle were talking about, life and what is life and what is the universe and Big Bang, and he said, I like the multiverse theory, and he was like, there's the electric universe theory, and I'm like, what's that? And he was like, the electric universe theory, and so he put me up on that, and he sent me the link to a documentary. It was pretty interesting. And then I just started looking into magnetic fields and stuff, and I came across this guy, and it says this video is a year old. Let me go to his channel. Is this the same? I'm really thinking it's the same guy. But I watched some of these videos. It's been over a year ago that I watched this. Now unless he just re-uploaded some stuff, because everything on here says 4 months, 3 months ago. I don't know. I'm almost certain this was the same guy though, because he had this one magnet. It was fucking huge, and he was like, "This magnet is so strong, it kind of hurts a little bit to be around it, because it's pulling the fucking metals out of your body." I don't know what. I'll just go back to the first video because he has like tons and tons of videos. And like I said, a lot of this stuff is saying months ago, but I don't think a lot of this is from months ago.
Okay, Tom, this is the Earth. Let's go lightning.
Whatever this is, magnetism explained and simplified. Do we want that one or do we want something more in depth than that? Why won't it let me skip these commercials? Everybody with me. But this guy looks weird. Like, when I saw him, I'm like, this guy's gonna teach me about magnetism. He has like huge gauges in his ear, a bald head, and all these weird tattoos. But never judge a book by its cover, bro.
Make this quickly. That way it can encompass the entire sphere. And I've given a lecture on what magnetism is, and it received a standing ovation actually, and people kind of actually chased me around for a few days after giving that lecture. It was kind of weird. Some people like that sort of adoration. I'm actually not one. I will point out to you before starting this video and making this video extremely simple in understanding the nature of what a magnet is and magnetism, that no branch of science, not my opinions, hardcore fact, has ever defined the word field and ever.
So this once again, I listened to this guy before Terrence Howard, really before, you know, his MIT lecture and this Joe Rogan stuff. And this guy says right here, look, I've done something that nobody else is really doing. And that's kind of what Terrence Howard is saying too. He's like, yo, I'm on to something different. I'm trying to do something a little different than I think I figured a different way to do it. Let's just try it this way. And let's look at it from this perspective. And everybody's giving them pushback. And that's why what really made me listen to this guy, because he says this a lot. He's like, look, I'm doing something, I'm really doing something that nobody else ain't doing.
Explained what magnetism is. They have not. I have every book ever written on magnetism, including the really, really, really old ones, and you won't find the answer anywhere. And go ask any PhD professor of physics, and you will not get an answer. The guy that everybody considers to be a genius, Feynman, he's actually sitting in a high back chair, and he's got his legs crossed, and he fidgets and wiggles like a frog in a hot place, asks for 8 minutes, you know, well, what is this thing, magnetism? He's asked this very seriously by an interviewer, and there's thousands of copies of it all over YouTube. It's about 7 minutes long, I believe. Type in Feynman explains magnetism. I dare you to watch that. And he talks about an old lady slipping on the ice, and he has no clue. He would actually be considered wiser if he said, you know, this is one of the large secrets I'd like to know the answer to, but I just don't know. That would have been the wise answer, but instead he fidgets and wiggles, and he basically tells the guy who questions him, and it's like, wait, no, what is magnetism? He's not being facetious. And he just basically said, well, it's just, you know, I can explain it to you, but you're not smart enough to understand it. That's basically what he says. So, human beings suffer from a conceptual default, and like we like to pigeonhole things like ice, water, and steam are all, of course, water, one thing only, different modality expressions of one molecule, i.e. water. Same is true of magnetism and dielectricity. To refer to magnetism, this word, magnetism, relative to dielectricity is like talking about ice versus water. Magnetism, I will be very simple and make this...
Is this not the same thing that Howard just said, that electricity and magnetism is the same thing on opposite scales? You go one way, you have electricity. You go the other way, you have magnetism. This guy he just said the same thing. So that's what, like I said, when he started saying this, and then, you know what, now I'm gonna pause right there on that one, because that's in the library. And now, if I can find this other old video. Yeah, everything with the vortex math is goddamn Tesla. Just as the guy right here. I think this is the first person I saw.
What I want to start with is just the very basic.
And this is him. And once again, that magnet guy just looks like some random. And he said, if I would have studied the stock market or something as much as I studied magnetism, I'd be rich as shit on the beach somewhere. And he's just some dude who just found that shit very interesting. I don't know if I ever heard him mention like what degrees or anything, or what like educational background he has. But when he explained magnetism, he seems pretty informative. And then he has like all different kind of magnets, and he does experiments to show you like how it works in actuality. And so right there, he very early on in that video, he got to a very similar point. I'm sitting on my hair. He got to a very similar point as Howard, as that electricity and magnetism are the same thing. Steam and ice are the same thing. And then Howard talked about, he didn't say vortex math. He said if people understood how important the numbers 3, 6, and 9 are, they would be able to solve a lot more things. And once again, art and education, I just be trying to find like new shit that I've never heard of, not always conspiracy theories, but different like intellectual concepts and ideas. And I just came across this guy, and look, if you look at him, not trying to say nothing bad about the guy, he looks like me. He looks like some random dude, bro. He's not in some grand hall in front of thousands of prestigious professors and college students wearing some fleece, some wool fucking coat with a silk goddamn tie or nothing. This guy is in his crib like the dude, you know what I'm saying? He's the dude. And then I was like, I've never heard of, and so I wanted to go to vortex math. I don't like numbers, man. I like colors and shapes and shit. I ain't never heard of no vortex math either. And this video is 14 years ago. This shit was uploaded 14 years ago. Like I said, I saw this shit years ago. And he explains like the 369 correlation. I was like, you know what? I'm not smart enough to really fully absorb that, but that's interesting. That is truly interesting. And that's why I really enjoyed that Howard interview, because he tied some stuff like different topics that I thought about or looked at, and he's tying all this shit together.
What is vortex-based mathematics? What is it saying? What are its applications? Well, first of all, vortex-based mathematics, Marco, his original claim was that he had tapped into and could model mathematically a previously unobserved invisible energy. Okay, the energy is referred to by many names. It has been by many people. It's been called tachyons or monopoles. You might call it gravitons. You might call it radiant energy, chi, prana. You might just call it energy, or E, like as in E equals mc squared. It is the motive driving force behind all of reality. It is the initial impulse, positive force behind creation. Okay? This energy is characterized by its linearity. In other words, it moves in a straight line. Every bit of mass, Einstein's relativity will tell us everything with even a slight bit of mass, even a photon, okay, which is supposed to have no mass, but even a photon coming from a distant star was seen to curve around the sun, okay, proving that relativity existed. So this shows that all mass, all matter is in a curved motion, a relative motion. This energy is different from that. It is, it penetrates everything, nothing can resist it, and it leaves a grain on everything. It is undecaying and eternal. Okay? And it is the control and standard upon which all of creation is based. So that is what I want to describe. Here is, in this symbol before you, those of you who are familiar with the math have seen this. Marco refers to it as the symbol of enlightenment. It is a mathematical decryption of what's known as the most great name of God, Baha'i faith.
Now keep that in mind.
I came to this work initially.
And then all the lines are connected, but the 3, 6, and 9 are all connected with a dotted red line. And all the other numbers are connected with solid black lines.
Because of my lifelong search for the understanding of how to intonate the most great name of God. But without going into religious mysticism, I'm simply...
That's, okay, and I'm still, this whole time I'm sitting here trying to figure out, like, how the fuck did I even get onto this shit? Like, why? What made me watch this? And so now he's trying to talk about, like, a proof, like, hard evidence for God. And if you guys been in here, like, you know, like, a couple years ago I was really big on the atheist experience. I used to watch that show a lot, yo, and we've had a lot of debates about creation and a God consciousness or an actual creator God and all these things like that. So I'm still a really big fan of Matt Dillahunty and the rest of the guys at the Atheist Experience out of Austin, Texas. But yeah, we don't listen to them as much anymore. But I really do believe, like, it was those, you know, a couple years ago when I was really hard into those conversations that I guess what this video must have been in the next lineup about hard proof for God or something like that. But, you know, somehow I just it intrigued me enough to watch this shit. And once again, I stepped away with something like, that's fucking interesting. Like, well, never knew that, never even thought of that.
Trying to point out that these numbers and everything that I'm going to show, even what this energy really is and does, the closest thing that you can get to it is sound. What this is a model for sound, for resonance.
Bruh, once again, why does he sound like Terrence Howard? But you're saying Terrence Howard sounds crazy. This guy's saying the same thing. And that's why I'm like, I've heard this somewhere before. Someone is trying to make a visual representation of sound and how sound works and how it oscillates and resonates. And I'm like, but then he's trying to tie it into, like, the God consciousness and how these numbers work. Like, this is, but okay, let's keep going. But once again, like, whatever Terrence has said, like, it's not my first time hearing that. He's just saying it in a different way, and he's really excited about it. And that's what I like, his enthusiasm, his excitement, because he really, if he lying, he don't know he lying. If he's wrong, he doesn't know he's wrong, and his 90-something patents don't know that he's wrong either. He's on to something. And he's saying like similar stuff about magnetism that I've heard from a completely different random guy, and saying stuff about sound and 369 that I heard from years ago from a completely different random guy. So this is how I like doing the little puzzle pieces. If one motherfucker say some shit, man, that motherfucker might be crazy. That motherfucker might be crazy. If two people say that shit, the motherfucker might be stupid and they don't know what they talking about. But when 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, you gotta start listening to somebody. Like, why all y'all think this? Why? Why do you? No. Somebody please explain. Why do you think this? Oh, you know what? No, that makes a little sense. I mean, I'm no mathematician. I actually hate numbers. I don't like to say that I hate anything. Well, especially numbers are concepts in theory. You know, I conceptually I hate numbers because I can't work well with them. But I still thought this was interesting enough to watch.
Harmonics. Numbers are harmonics. They're musical. Okay? They're
He said
polarized.
that, so I'm
They
not
create
excited.
color. They create all the effects that we see. Okay? And these are just simple whole numbers. I'm not talking about any kind of esoteric or complex numbers. Okay, so
I don't think he holds any religion right now, because he said I was something one time. But I'm not sure if he holds a religion right now.
in a circle, we see all the numbers we're familiar with. We start here with 1. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right? So those are all the single-digit numbers known. I don't know of anyone who's ever, in any of the talk I've ever done, suggested another single-digit number that exists. Any other number is going to at least create double digits, triple digits. And what we're showing here is that if you add those numbers back together, which is a common practice in numerology and computer science, it's called finding the digital root. Okay? What it does is reveals an underlying pattern underneath any bigger number that you can find, or any infinite series. Everything has an underlying pattern to it, and these single-digit numbers will give you the underlying pattern. And what we're looking for in nature is patterns. When we want to model fractals, self-similar forms, all this is based on patterns. And this is a way you can create all these patterns, and you can model a higher dimensional energy, okay, and show how it's creating those patterns. So these are our simple numbers, 1 through 9. We're going in a clockwise, right-handed direction around the circle, okay? So let's just, what we're saying here with this symbol is that with it you can do all the functions of math, which is addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. There's no other known functions of math. All of those functions of math can be done instantaneously, simultaneously, and they can be shown to be revealed in one single map, which can do every function of math, which can model every principle of physics, which can model chemistry, the periodic table, which can model genetics, biology. That you can do every function of math as one. So I wanted to show you how those work and how they relate to this symbol, and then what this symbol ultimately produces, which is the real goal of the work. Okay? So let's start here with 1. It's a really easy number. Oftentimes they say 1 is the loneliest number, or we might think of one God, one universe. It is a cohesive number, a unity. Okay? So we start with 1. What is 1 doing on this symbol? Well, if we draw a straight line connecting it to the next number, it goes to 2. And what that is called doubling. 1 doubled becomes 2. Okay? 2, if it doubles, and we follow this line again, becomes 4. 4, if we double, again following our line, becomes 8. 8 doubled then is 16. But here I have a 7. How come is that? Because if we add 6 and 1 together, we get 7. And again, we're looking for underlying the pattern, underlying the big numbers, the sequences of numbers, we have patterns of single-digit numbers. So when we get to 16, 6 and 1 is 7. So that's my next number. 16 doubled is 32. But I have a 5 here. But then again, if I add 3 plus 2 is 5. Okay. I could just as well say 7 doubled is 14. 4 plus 1 is going to be 5 too, so it doesn't matter how I do it. Okay?
That shit right there was like, what the fuck? Oh,
32 doubled is going to be 64. Bringing me back up here. But here I have a 1. But 6 plus 4 equals 10, and 1 plus 0 comes back to 1.
Yo, I was like, what the fuck? How does it do
64 doubled is 128. 8 plus 2 is 10. 10 plus 1 is 11. And 1 plus 1 is 2. 128 doubled is 256, which reduces back to 4. 256 doubled is 512, reducing back to 8. 512 doubled is 1024, which reduces back to 7. 1024 doubled is 2048, which reduces back to 5. No matter how many times I go around, no matter what numbers I take, and no matter what combination I do. In other words, I could say this is 11, where my 2 is here. 1 plus 1 is 2. 11 doubled is 22, and 2 plus 2 is 4. There's no possible way to break this doubling sequence. Why is that significant? Okay. Because doubling is how vibration and motion occurs. And this energy, which is going to be represented by our number 9, this tachyon, monopole, what we're going to call etherons, this energy is the source of all motion, of all vibration, of all time, of heat. It's the source of life. It's what keeps everything moving forward. Okay? It's what keeps creation doubling. What are examples of doubling? We could take cell division. Okay? You can see you have 1 cell, which becomes 2, 4, 8, 16, 32 cells. They stay all together as an aggregate until they reach 64. At 64, all the cells become individualized. They can become brain cells or heart cells, right? So at 64, you get each cell becoming an individual. In other words, showing the parallel between the 64 and the 1. Okay, this is why 64 is a cycle in the Mayan calendar or in the I Ching, all relating back to the 1. It's a completion of this cycle, which we call a bounded infinity. It's an infinity of duration, constantly moving, not necessarily an infinity of direction, because it has an axis, which we're going to talk about. Okay, what else doubles? How about music scales? From C to C to C is doubling. Okay, doubling harmonics. You go from 440 to 880, or depending how you're setting your frequencies. You have doubling in harmonics. Okay, so there's many, many examples of these numbers of doubling and how that works in creation. Take, for instance, nuclear reactions. You have one neutrino which liberates 2, which liberates 4, which liberates 8. In other words, neutrinos are working on a doubling sequence as well. Sometimes it's called a chain reaction or a geometric progression. Another example of doubling, the binary code in computers. Okay, I can go on. We could talk about the 64 codons in the DNA. All of this highly related. Okay, but let me continue with our basic number sequence. What happens if I follow my track in the opposite way? Well, if I'm doubling this way, I must be halving in the other way. So let's find out if that's true. Half of 1 is 0.5. Again, back to my 5. Half of 0.5 is 0.25. 2 and 5 equals 7. Half of 0.25 is 0.125, which equals 8. Half of 0.125 is 0.0625, which reduces back to 4. Okay? Halving works the same way. I can't remember what half of 0.0625 I think is I forget what the number is. Anyway, you can do it. You can make the calculation on your own. You'll find no matter how far you go, you can half. I could do it just as well. I could say half of 10 is 5. Okay? Half of 5 is 2.5, which equals 7. Okay? So you can do it any number of ways, and it's always going to work. This is an infinite series of halving. Very significant. Because when you have a motion in one way, you're going to have a trailing motion in another way, and we're going to talk a lot about that and how it works. This black line that you're seeing here is the pathway that everything takes that moves in creation. It is the spin continuum that the universe is on. It's why the universe is always moving, but it's never actually going anywhere. It's on a treadmill. It's a bounded infinity. Alright? And you're going to get real familiar with that concept of the bounded infinity. It touches everything we're going to do. But I don't want to get too stuck on that. I want to take a look at some of the other properties of my symbol. Now here I've talked about 6 numbers. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. Back to 1. What about these numbers? Now I have 6 and 3 and 9, and they're connected by this pyramid. It's only connected at the top, by the way, never connected on the bottom. So this triangle or pyramid here connecting the 3, 9, and 6. Well, let's find out what happens with these numbers when they start getting mathematical functions. Let's take 3 at first, since it's the smallest, the simplest. What happens when I double 3? 3 doubled becomes 6. Okay. Well, 6 doubled then becomes 12. And 2 plus 1 is 3. 12 doubled becomes 24. 2 plus 4 is 6. 24 doubled is 48. 4 plus 8 is 12, and 2 plus 1 is 3. 48 doubled is 96. Comes back to 6. Okay? So no matter how far you double these, you're oscillating. 3, 6, 3, 6. Halving would be the same. I could say half of 6 is 3. Half of 3 is 1.5, which is 6. You could do it any number of ways. Half of 30 is 15, which is 6. No matter which way you do it, halving or doubling, 3 and 6 are oscillating back and forth. None of these numbers do that. Before you can get to another 1 on this doubling path, you've got to come all the way through these other numbers. Only 3 and 6 are oscillating back and forth, just like magnetic fields, okay? Like a pulse, like a representation of duality, of opposites, in and out, to and fro, back and forth. Okay? That is how the 3 and 6 work. We could call them and refer to them as magnetic numbers. But how come if they're oscillating back and forth, they're not connected to each other by a line? You see there's no line here. And in fact, my 6 has to go up here before it can come back down here, and the same with my 3. They're both connected to the 9. Now I've hesitated to get to the 9, but in fact, it's the most important number. Or we shouldn't say that. Maybe we should say all the numbers are equally important, but the 9 is really the king of the system, or the queen of the chess game. It is the control for everything else. So what is the 9? Well, what happens if you double 9? 9 doubled becomes 18, right? 18 doubled is 36. 36 doubled is 72. So if you add any of those numbers together, 18, 36, 72, they always equal 9. What about if I half 9? Half of 9 is 4.5, which equals 9. Okay, half of 4.5 is 2.25, which equals 9. 5 plus 2 is 7, 7 plus 2 is 9. So no matter whether I double or half, the 9 is never changing. It's forming an axis here that's polarizing all of these numbers. Because in this system, we're actually able to give polarity to numbers. So I've shown you one function here. We've been talking about, or two functions you could say. We've been talking about doubling. We've been talking about halving. But let's go back a little bit simpler. Let's try to understand, before we go too complex into physics, what are these numbers? And what do we mean by the functions of math? Okay? So we'll start simply with multiplication tables. All right, let me bring up my next board. Okay, now here I don't have my lines drawn in. I'm sorry for the primitive board, but you'll have to bear with me. Here I'm showing you multiplication tables. Now we started with my 1. Okay? The number 1, when you multiply it, what does it do? 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 4 is 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. After that, I'm simply going to repeat. If I go to 10, 1 plus 0 comes back to 1. 11, back to 2. 12, 3. 13, 4. 14, 5. So no matter how far I multiply, when reducing to single digits, I'm constantly going to have this pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's the only number that will make that pattern. 1 is the only multiplication series which goes up in increments of 1. So it's unique. One of the important things in the system to remember is that there's never any redundancy. It's never doing the same thing over and over, or the same thing twice, you could say. Exactly. So 1 is the only number which goes up in increments of 1. How about if I come over here on the other side of my 9? Well, you can notice something pretty simple right away with my initial symbol. These numbers that are all lined up straight across, we can notice they all equal back to 9. So 8 plus 1 is 9. 7 and 2 is 9. 6 and 3 is 9. 4, 5 and 4 is 9. So 9 is always forming the center line that separates and polarizes the numbers. And so it's actually turning these numbers into mirror images, or right and left. It's giving a polarity to everything. So when I start to show these multiplication tables, you might say, well, what do you mean by mirrors? Because the 1 and the 8, they don't look like mirrors. Okay? But we know we have something called spin symmetry or mirror imaging in physics. You could say if I have a positive particle going one way, then there should be a negative particle. There should be mirror imaging between things directionally, or just like between right and left. Your hands are mirror images. And we don't really have 10 fingers. You have 0.5. which is half of a whole, is 100%. So when I have 1 going up in increments of 1, well, my 8, what happens is I'm going down in increments of 1. So you can see immediately that I have polarity. When 1 is positive, going up, 8 is negative, going down. Okay, so 8 times 2 is 16. 6 and 1 is 7. Okay, 8 times 3 is 24. 2 plus 4 is 6. 8 times 3 is 32. 3 plus 2 is 5. 8 times 4 is 40. Wait a minute, no. I said 8 times 1, 8 times 2, 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 5 is 40, just 4. 8 times 6 is 48, which equals 12, which comes back to 3. 8 times, where am I at now? 8 times 7 is 56. 5 plus 6 is 11, and 1 plus 1 is 2. And 8 times 8 is 64, which comes back to 1. 8 times 9 is 72, which comes back to 9. So in other words, my 8 in single digits is going 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 9. It's a mirror image of this in that when my 1 is positive going up in 1s, my 8 is negative going down in 1s. If my 8 was positive going in this direction, which would still, incrementally be down in 1s, my 1 would be negative going in the opposite direction. So any one of these numbers that equals the 9 separated from each other, if they equal 9, they have different polarity. 1 is positive and 1 is going to be negative. Okay? We're modeling here, I should say, what we're looking for is mathematical perfection. There can be no spaces, no gaps, nothing omitted, nothing left out. So let's take a further look into that perfection. Let's go to 2. Okay? 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 5 is 10. We're coming back to 1 here. 1 plus 0 is 1. 12, which is 3. 14, 4 plus 1 is 5. 16, 6 plus 1 is 7. 18, 8 and 1 is 9. I could go to 20, but I'm back here. 22 comes back to 4. 24, back to 6. So no matter how far I go, it's going to repeat the same pattern. 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Well, let's look over here. Now we know if my 2 is positive going up in 2s, my 7 is going to have to be negative going down in 2s. Well, 7 times 2 is 14. 4 and 1 is 5. 7 times 3 is 21. 2 plus 1 is 3. 28. 2 and 8 is 10. 1 and 0 is 1. 28. Then we've got 35, which is 8. 42, 6. 49, which comes back to 4. Okay, and then 56, again 2. And 63, which is coming back to 9. So while my 2 is going up, 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, always up in increments of 2. My 7 is going down in increments of 2. 7, 5, 3, 1, 8, 6, 4, 2,
No way,
9.
bro.
Always beginning and ending with my 9.
Tony Blair? The ex-prime minister. Now he's gonna be, look, motherfuckers think like, oh no, everybody, they're just in our best interest. No, man, look, man. All these motherfuckers in cahoots. I mean, the World Economic Forum has an agenda. It's laid out. I mean, we don't know all the details of it. They tell us a little bit of it, but they have an agenda. So they're obviously have picked a president who they feel will be the best man to push this agenda through. Are you gonna stay the course? Sir, yes, sir. That's all we want to know, man. We're gonna stay the course, bro. It took us a long time to build up this shit the way we got it. We can't let it fall. Tony Blair said, I'm the man for the job. I will push us into a new world order. And I will usher in a one world government. Now, my name ain't Patch Adams, and it sure hell ain't. So yeah, like I say, man, I watched this dude right here explain vortex math one time, and I was like, that's interesting. The way that the numbers relate to each other like that. I was like, I never knew that. I don't think anybody ever showed me that sequence or series of how to like just play around with numbers, doubling and halving, and how they once again how they just relate to each other like that. If you add them up, they're all going around that scale. They should always add back up to whatever the origin number is. Like, damn. But then, he says that understanding that is understanding sound. Oh, I missed some comments over here. What's going on? You might be right. Fell a long time ago. Let's go to space. I grew up around that watching Wu-Tang TV series. Big Rob, huge Elon fan, but we ain't going to space anytime soon, given we can't pass the Van Allen belt and never have. What are you saying there? Because somebody says that the moon is definitely beyond the Van Allen belt. So everything is mathematics. That's where the idea of the universe as holographic comes from. The holographic universe. Ooh. I like that theory. And basically it is a hologram because we kind of understand that our brain actually does the thinking function. Alright, the motorized function of the body. And our brain is inside of a dark enclosed space. Like the one organ
that makes sense of the external world isn't an actual sense like taste, touch, smell. So our senses have to go out and feel around and then come back and tell the brain what the fuck is going on, and the brain has to uh, decipher that encryption and try to make sense of it. So the universe is basically a hologram because we're not sure what the fuck is out there. Yeah, while I was listening to a Baby Keem album for the first time, Young Boy got some bars. It's way too convenient. Too convenient.
What I want to start with is just a very basic concept.
This is the Earth's Let's Go Lightning Round. Dre, you got your electrolyte?
Yeah, they will not let me skip the commercials to get right to this video.
I can actually, because I won't make a video if I don't feel like it's worthwhile, sum up what a magnet is and magnetism very simply in this video. And I'm going to try to make this quickly. That way it can encompass the entire sphere, and I've given a lecture on what a magnetism is, and it received standing ovation actually, and people kind of actually chased me around for a few days after giving that lecture. It was kind of weird. Physics, and you will not get an answer. Wiser if he said, you know, this is one of the large secrets, so simple for people to wrap their minds around it. This were a magnet before it became a so-called magnet. It is quantitatively 100% identical. The only thing that has changed is its qualitative nature. So a magnet is qualitative, not quantitative. What defines them, whether it be samarium cobalt, ferrite, neodymium iron boron, makes no difference whatsoever. It is a qualitative object. A magnet, to give a simple analogy, is a field magnifier. I don't know if you ever grew up like young boys did. You had magnifying glasses, we'd burn grass, and we'd play God with our magnifying glasses. Of course, the larger the magnifying glass, the more powerful it is. And you can actually get a Fresnel lens. You can literally melt rock. There's thousands of YouTube videos of someone putting up a Fresnel lens about yay big on a wood frame, and you just flip it over and point it and get the focal point directed on a rock. It will literally create lava. Well, it'll start shooting off sparks and rock chips will fly off. It's like, well, only thing you're doing is you're creating a point source, are you not? You reach the focal point, you focus in on that rock or whatever it is, burn wood, literally create lava, burn the rock. You're creating a point source. Like, well, it's the same light that was always there. What is the magnifier doing? It is creating a point source. It is focusing in the energy of that light or EMF upon something. A magnet is an inside-out AC generator. To define an AC generator, I'll actually do that in this video too, as well as defining a magnet. AC generator is an inside-out magnet. Every magnet, the magnetic field, of course, is extra to it. The exterior of the loss of energy or inertia of the dielectric. An AC generator is the inversion of the magnet, where the magnet is on the inside and the dielectric reflector is on the outside. You actually vary that, and an AC generator is just an arch form, and it doesn't generate any power at all. It actually manifests it. You actually change it with variation due to time. You introduce a temporal component. You turn the magnetic field against the dielectric reflector, and you actually have the manifestation of power. So a magnet is basically an inside-out AC manifestor, is what they should be called, rather than an AC generator. A magnet is analogous, once again, to a magnifying glass that has its focus at the dead center. Once again, we're talking about a point source object. This causes a multiplicative effect on the ether, of the ether, not on the ether. I should be very, very specific. Not on the ether, but of the ether. Ab extra to the magnet, because the magnet is a qualitative object. If the magnetic field, i.e. the magnetic field around the magnet, but the conjugate field ab extra to the magnet is not merely magnetism, but also too dielectricity. This is why people get confused. They think, well, what's happening outside of that? The magnet is the influence of the magnetic field, but if you actually look underneath the magnetic field viewing film or underneath the supercell, you will see a conjugate field. You'll actually see the magnetodielectric hyperboloid. You'll see a black hole with one pole and a black hole with the other pole. This is the hyperboloid of increasing inertia and acceleration towards the plane of inertia. But everybody is only fascinated by the magnetism around a magnet. They're kind of invisible, like children to the puppet master, like a bunch of kids just see the puppets and a puppet play. Like, they see the magnetism, and this is what fascinates them, of course. But what's really important and what's really going on is not only the strings attached to the puppet, but the hand and the puppeteer above it. And this is the dielectric that human beings are so, just like children, so blatantly blind to. So this creates a multiplicative field effect. Just like this laser, even though this is a weak laser, I actually have a 5-watt blue laser, which is really, really, really dangerous. You actually have a multiplicative effect here, where this is just putting out, I think, like 150 milliwatts. 150 milliwatts in the case of an LED is really, really dim. I mean, this is powerful enough to permanently damage the back of your eye. It's a multiplicative effect. What's a multiplicative effect in a simple analogy? Well, the Romans had an icon for it. They called it the fascius, where they'd actually take multiple sticks, bundle of sticks, and they were bound together. You could break one stick or a few sticks, but if you bound them all together, they become unbreakable, essentially. So this is a multiplicative effect. Instead of say, well, I can break one stick, I can break 5 sticks, I can break 10 sticks, but yes, you can, but you bind them all together, you have the collective working in unison to create a phenomena which is way more powerful than each are individually. So it doesn't become 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, say 10 sticks, you have a power of 10. No, when you actually bind all 10 together, the multiplicative effect is that you have something, say to the power of 30, say to the power of 40. A 5-watt laser, for example, a very, very simple analogy, is infinitely more powerful and dangerous than a 5-watt light bulb. What's the difference? 5 watts is 5 watts, right? What's the difference? 5 watts is 5 watts. Well, yes, it is, but when you create a point source field, you have something that operates at a multiplicative factor, and this is exactly what a magnet is, because a magnet is a qualitative object, not a quantitative object, because quantitatively it's identical before it becomes a magnet as it is after it becomes a magnet. So a magnet in simple is nothing other than a field laser, i.e. a point source field phenomena. Both a laser and a magnet are point source field objects. A black hole, by the way, analogously, is a point source object. It's not a hole, and the only reason people call it black is because mass and magnitude have been vanished from this universe, because this is where dielectricity has overthrown magnetism's ability to keep it within the visible universe. The only reason anything has a spatial footprint of XYZ dimensions of Cartesian value, well, it has a mass and magnitude of 1 solar unit, in other words, the size of our sun. Well, it's completely vanished. This is a supermass with no magnitude, which human beings can't wrap their brain around, but it becomes really, really, really simple. This is where dielectricity has literally overthrown magnetism's ability to keep that within the visible universe. It's a point source. So 3 perfect examples of point source field objects with fascinating phenomena. Black hole, a laser, and a magnet. Fascinating. By making them point source, they become a multiplicative field phenomena with fascinating, amazing phenomena and attributes. Everybody knows that the phenomena of a black hole is fascinating. Everybody knows the phenomena of a laser is absolutely fascinating. There's not a single person on this earth that is impressed by a 5-watt light bulb. I don't know if you ever flipped on a 5-watt, they make them as little reading lights. They're not really light bulbs. That's too weak for a light bulb. Nobody is afraid of or impressed by a 5-watt light bulb, just for reading a book really, really close. Yeah? Pull it over your head or on top of your head, a little lamp, 5 watts. Everybody is impressed by the danger and the power and the brilliance, really quite dangerous, of a 5-watt laser. Especially if it's an ultraviolet 5-watt. I have a blue 5-watt laser. Really powerful, really impressive, really wicked. Get it? 5 watts and 5 watts. Nobody's impressed on Earth by a 5-watt light bulb. Nobody. Not even one person. Everybody on Earth, as long as they have they're alive, is impressed by a 5-watt laser. What defines that 5-watt laser? Well, it's a point source field phenomena. Goes the words coherent light radiation. Well, attributionally that's correct, but what a laser is a point source object, which is exactly what a magnet is. Before a magnet becomes a magnet, there is nobody on Earth that is impressed by it. It's just a ceramic lump, whether it be samarium cobalt, neodymium iron boron, ferrite. Nobody on Earth is impressed by it. But you turn it into a magnet, and you've only changed its qualitative nature. Well, the entire Earth is fascinating. They love to play with it. They love to ponder about it. It's the exact same thing. Point source objects. So a magnet is a field laser, i.e. point source field phenomena. Both are point source objects. Black hole, all 3. Black hole, laser, magnet. Laser, of course, is an EMR, electromagnetic radiation point source, with power made multiplicative to outside of the laser. And of course you have not in the case of an LED laser, by the way. There's a reason why LEDs are so bad for your eyes, actually, because it's quasi point source light. LEDs are bad for your eyes. I know why everybody loves them, because they're super cheap, they last forever, and they take little power to power them, but LEDs are bad for your eyes. So, a magnet is a point source object with this multiplicative power outside of the magnet. A magnet is a constructive field interference of the conjugate field of the magnetic and the dielectric, respectively the torus and the hyperboloid. Yeah? Something is only called a magnet because it carries a field of influence ab extra to the magnet itself, wherever it goes. A magnet is not emitting anything. Because it is a point source object, it is creating a conjugate field of the ether itself, because magnetism, dielectricity, gravity, all of these are one and the same thing, like ice, water, and steam, which any child should recognize that. It's, you know, say a child, I don't know, when does a child recognize ice, water, and steam are the same thing, or are taught that? It's like, it's the same stuff. You're looking at three different phenomena that are one thing. Same is true of dielectricity, magnetism, gravity. Electricity is just the consubstantiality of magnetism and dielectricity, or phi times psi equals Q and Planck of electrification. So electricity is this dual field phenomena of dielectricity and magnetism. So magnetism is constructive interference of the conjugate field. Something is only called a magnet because it carries with it this field of influence ab extra to itself. A magnet has a unified atomic conjugate fields where everything is operating in unison. I don't know if you know this or not, but it used to be a rule that when soldiers would cross a bridge, you know, they'd march in unison, up to the left, right, you know, soldiers would, you know, they would obey their drill sergeant, they'd do everything the same, they'd all work in complete and total unison, which is definitive of what a magnet is, for example. When they walk across a bridge, they were told, there's a specific name for it that they're given to break formation where everybody's literally going left, right, and you have 100 soldiers that are literally left, right, they're all doing everything in unison. It creates this multiplicative harmonic effect where bridges, you know, start shaking violently, especially if it's a weak bridge, which a lot of them were back in the day. They're simple hand-built bridges, so they would actually known to walk out of step with one another such that they wouldn't actually create this ab extra harmonic. And this is the exact same thing, since a magnet is a qualitative object, not a quantitative object, where everything is working in unison and lockstep with everything else on the atomic scale. Whether it be ferrite, samarium cobalt, neodymium iron boron, doesn't make any difference. So magnet has unified conjugate fields, just like the soldiers marching across the bridge. A magnet, once again...
Does this make sense to anybody? I listened to a couple of this guy's videos, and he does have like,
I don't know, he has like this kind of paper, this see-through film type material, where you can see like what the magnet is doing. I was like, what the fuck? Where'd you get that shit from, right? But his channel is very interesting, and he really just tackles magnetism and the misconceptions of dielectric energies and magnetic energies. Like I said, when I came across this dude's channel, I was like, sounds interesting. And he didn't disappoint. And just right there, he just broke down the whole thing. It's a point reference. It's a field laser. It takes the electric fields and magnifies them, a 5-watt light bulb and a 5-watt laser. a magnifying glass being able to burn ants and shit like that. He says the magnet is the same thing. The properties don't come from the magnet. The magnets are adjusting the field energies around it. All right. Alright, I'm gonna stop it short right there. Still trying to add some details to this first detail there.
temperature change because I could not have made it up here today without that AC on. It was way too hot, bro. Damn, the light. And see, the past couple of days I just had the windows open and stuff, but now I can't, even the air is just hot coming in. And so now, what I try to do is keep as much sunlight out as possible. Keep that sunlight out. It'll stay a little cool. Alright, appreciate everybody chilling in with me for a little while today. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.